The instant the little girl vanished, the entire town seemed to stop breathing. As soon as the call reached the police station, chaos erupted. Voices overlapping, phones ringing, officers scrambling. An 8-year-old child had disappeared without a single clue left behind. No noise, no witnesses, no footprints. One moment she was gathering pine cones near a forest path. The next, she had simply ceased to exist. Officer Daniel felt a knot form in his gut as he pulled up to the scene. By then, the girl's mother had collapsed to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably and begging the officers to bring her daughter back. Her father stood rigid, shock etched across his face, staring into the tree line as though the forest itself had swallowed her whole. Nothing was disturbed. Not a footprint, not a piece of clothing, not even a snapped twig. Only a heavy, unnatural silence hovered over the woods. That afternoon the forest was quiet, too quiet. Daniel had already spent hours combing through the trees, his uniform soaked with sweat, nerves stretched to the breaking point. Search teams fanned out across the terrain, drones circled overhead, and the weight of every passing minute pressed harder on Daniel's shoulders. Then, without warning, his K9 partner Rex shot off the trail like a bolt of lightning. "Rex! Heel!" Daniel yelled, but the dog didn't even glance back. He sprinted with a speed and desperation Daniel had never seen. By the time he caught up, Daniel's heart nearly stopped. Rex wasn't barking. Instead, he stood upright on his hind legs, frantically tapping his paws against the fogged window of an old, abandoned camper hidden deep in the woods. Tap, tap, tap. His eyes were wide, frightened, urgent, pleading. And as Daniel peered through that grimy window, he instantly understood why Rex had dragged him there. Before we continue, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And I'm genuinely curious. Where are you watching from? Drop your country below. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The day had barely begun when the first distress call came in. An 8-year-old girl had disappeared along the forest trail behind her house. When Daniel arrived, her parents were waiting at the edge of the woods, both pale and trembling. The mother clutched her daughter's small pink backpack to her chest, rocking as if holding the last piece of her child. The father stood beside her, rigid and staring into the trees, hoping his little girl might emerge at any moment. But the silence pressing in around them felt suffocating. Rex paced anxiously at Daniel's side, his tail held stiff and his ears perked. Something in the air had the dog on edge. Daniel knelt and tried to calm him, but Rex remained tense, fixed on the forest as though he sensed something none of them could see. Search teams swept through the woods. Drones buzzed overhead. Volunteers shouted the girl's name, their voices fading into the trees. Daniel's dread deepened when the girl's tiny footprints suddenly ended in the mud. No drag marks, no path showing where she went. Just nothing. "This isn't normal," Daniel muttered under his breath. Rex let out a low whine that confirmed Daniel's fear. They pushed further into the forest, and the deeper they went, the more oppressive the silence became. Rex glided ahead, weaving between branches, nose to the ground, muscles taut. Daniel recognized the posture immediately. Rex wasn't just tracking. He was responding to something urgent. Suddenly, the dog froze. His head whipped to the left, ears alert, eyes wide. And then he bolted. "Rex, heel!" Daniel shouted again, but the dog didn't slow for even a heartbeat. Branches scraped at Daniel's arms as he sprinted after him, stumbling over roots and fallen logs. Officers shouted behind him, but Rex was already racing into the darker part of the woods, territory no one went into willingly. Daniel crashed through the thick brush and burst into a narrow hidden clearing. Rex stood perfectly still at its center. The air was unnervingly still, as if the trees themselves were bracing for something. In front of Rex sat a decaying camper, half swallowed by vines and leaves. Daniel blinked. He'd never seen it on any map, and none of the search crews had reported it. Rex lowered his body and sniffed sharply at the stale air. A chill ran down Daniel's spine. Something was terribly wrong here. Before he could take another step, Rex rose and planted his paws against the camper's fogged window, tapping rapidly. Tap, tap, tap. It wasn't aggression. It wasn't excitement. It was fear. Other officers stumbled into the clearing, their faces shifting from confusion to dread. As Rex continued tapping, a dull thud echoed from inside the camper, followed by a faint, muffled cry. Every officer went still. Someone was inside. Daniel exchanged a wary glance with the others and gripped the camper's rusted handle. The air felt thick around them, as though the forest itself wanted to warn them. With one hard pull, the door screeched open, releasing a gush of cold, stale air. Flashlights sliced through the darkness, revealing chaos, torn blankets, overturned drawers, muddy smears, and a narrow walkway leading to the back. Rex darted inside, nose twitching frantically. Daniel followed, sweeping his light over the clutter, and his breath caught when it landed on a small pink sneaker knocked onto its side. The silence inside felt suffocating. Then he saw movement. A tiny form curled beneath a makeshift cot, shivering violently, arms wrapped around her knees. The missing girl. Her eyes were wide and glassy with terror. "It's okay. You're safe now," Daniel whispered as he knelt beside her. But she didn't calm. Instead, she slowly lifted a trembling finger and pointed toward the shadows behind her. Daniel turned his flashlight and froze. Strange tools lay scattered across the floor. Ropes, notes scribbled on torn paper, empty food containers, a filthy cloth that made Daniel's stomach twist. This wasn't a random hideout. Someone had placed her here on purpose. "He said he'd come back," she whispered, her voice cracking. A cold wave washed through Daniel. Whoever took her wasn't finished. Officers carefully pulled her out from under the cot. She clung to Daniel's sleeve, flinching at every sound. Rex stayed pressed against her side, gently nudging her as if reminding her she was finally safe. Outside, Daniel knelt beside her. "Can you tell me what happened, sweetheart?" She swallowed hard, eyes flicking toward the trees. "He took me," she said. "I was walking home, and he grabbed me. He told me not to scream. He said he already knew where to hide me." Her certainty made Daniel's skin crawl. Whoever the kidnapper was, he knew the forest intimately. Rex stiffened suddenly. Daniel followed his line of sight to a jacket draped over a chair inside the camper, one with a distinctive patch sewn into the sleeve. His heart lurched. It belonged to someone local, someone trusted. Officers searched the pockets and found a keyring and a folded map covered with X marks in remote sections of the forest. This wasn't the kidnapper's first spot. It was part of a pattern. "We need to move," Daniel ordered. "He's nearby." Rex growled softly, hackles rising. They weren't dealing with a stranger. The man was close, much closer than anyone wanted to admit. Officers formed a protective ring around the girl as they guided her toward the patrol cars. The forest seemed different now, alive, watchful, tense. Daniel kept one hand on Rex's harness and the other near his radio. "Units, be advised," he said. "The suspect may still be in the area." The girl tugged Daniel's fingers. He said he'd come back before sunset." Daniel froze. Sunset was only minutes away. Rex suddenly lunged forward, dragging Daniel several steps as he barked furiously at a cluster of pine trees. Officers swung their flashlights in the same direction and spotted a man partially concealed behind a trunk. Before he could flee, officers closed in and tackled him to the ground. Keys in his pocket matched those from the camper. The patch on his sleeve confirmed everything. He wasn't a stranger at all. He was a former forest maintenance worker fired for trespassing near homes. Hours later, back at the station, the girl sat wrapped in a blanket in her parents' arms. A doctor quietly informed them that if she had been found even an hour later, she likely wouldn't have survived. Daniel looked down at Rex, who still scanned every corner, alert even in exhaustion. "Good boy," Daniel murmured. Rex hadn't just found her. He had saved her life and stopped a man who fully intended to strike again.